What if the past isn't just history, but a ghost whispering vengeance into your present? Imagine a farmer toiling away, his love betrayed by the two people he trusted most. Now, what if that betrayal wasn't new, but an echo from a century ago, brought back by a spirit determined to right ancient wrongs? This isn't just a tale of heartbreak. It's a terrifying loop of karma that ends with an unforgivable twist you won't see coming. Are you ready for a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about fate and retribution? Thomas was a man of the earth, his hands calloused from years of working the soil. His heart, however, was as soft as the fresh-turned loam. He'd poured every ounce of his being into his farm and into his wife, Sarah. Every sunrise saw him out in the fields, working till his bones screamed, all for their future, for their shared dream. Their little farmhouse, nestled deep in the valley, was his kingdom, and Sarah his queen. He trusted his best friend, Mark, like a brother. They'd shared beers on the porch after grueling days, planned new crops, and dreamt of prosperity together. Thomas was simple, honest, a salt-of-the-earth kind of guy, the type who believed in handshakes and loyalty. So, when the first whispers started, the hushed glances, the shared laughter between Sarah and Mark that felt a little too intimate, he brushed it off. Couldn't be. Not his Sarah, not his Mark. Impossible. But a seed of doubt, once planted, grows into a monstrous, suffocating vine. Sarah began to change, distant, cold. Her touch, once comforting, felt alien. Mark, too, became evasive, avoiding Thomas's gaze, his usually boisterous humor replaced by nervous stammering. Thomas, in his innocence, blamed himself. Was he working too much? Not romantic enough? He redoubled his efforts, bought Sarah a pretty dress from town, brought her wildflowers. She accepted them with a tight smile, her eyes already elsewhere. The betrayal was brewing, a poisoned cup he was about to drink from, unaware. One sweltering evening, after a particularly grueling day hauling hay, Thomas walked past the old, dilapidated slave quarters on his property, now just decaying shacks. A sudden, inexplicable chill ran down his spine, and a faint, mournful moan seemed to carry on the wind. He dismissed it as the wind playing tricks, but the hairs on his arms stood on end. As he entered his own home, he found Sarah and Mark in the parlor, too close, their conversation dying abruptly. The air crackled with a silent tension. Sarah quickly excused herself, her eyes darting away like a cornered animal. Mark looked like a deer caught in headlights. Thomas felt a prickle, a faint, acrid smell, like burnt wood, though no fire was lit anywhere in the house. He brushed it off again, trying to rationalize it, but a dark, sickening feeling settled deep in his gut. This was wrong. So wrong. The audience needs to feel his pain, their anger building, a quiet fury for the good man being deceived. The subtle signs quickly became glaring billboards. Late-night phone calls Sarah couldn't explain. Her unexplained absences that always seemed to coincide with Mark's. His truck parked a little too long, a little too often, down the dirt road. Thomas, though heartbroken, still clung to a sliver of hope, a desperate, aching need to believe in the goodness of those he loved. He confronted Sarah gently, his voice trembling with a vulnerability he rarely showed. "Sarah, is something going on?" Her eyes, usually so warm, turned to ice. "Don't be ridiculous, Thomas. You're imagining things. You're just tired, overworked." A lie. A cold, calculated lie that shattered his world into a million tiny, irreparable pieces. That's when he realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, cruel betrayal. The affair, once hidden, became brazen. They stopped trying to hide, or perhaps Thomas just stopped ignoring the obvious. He'd find them whispering in the barn, lingering glances in the kitchen. His home, his sanctuary, turned into a battlefield of silent torment, each stolen moment a fresh wound. He was losing everything he held dear: his wife, his best friend, his peace of mind. He was being systematically erased from his own life. One night, he overheard them planning a weekend getaway, whispering about how easy it was to deceive him, how foolish he was. He felt his blood run cold. But as Sarah chuckled, a small antique mirror on the wall above her head suddenly vibrated violently, then fell, shattering on the floor between them with a sharp crack. Sarah shrieked. Mark, visibly unnerved, just shook his head. "Just an old house, Sarah. You're jumpy." But Thomas saw it. A faint, almost invisible shadow dart across the wall, a fleeting darkness that defied explanation. Thomas was a shell of his former self. He barely ate, slept even less, plagued by nightmares of their laughter echoing in his empty home. The farm, once his pride and joy, lay neglected, its once thriving crops now withered and dying. He thought about leaving, about confronting them with a shotgun, about anything to stop the excruciating pain, but he was paralyzed by grief and disbelief. He'd lost his will to fight, feeling like a ghost in his own house, haunted by the living. One stormy afternoon, he was alone, staring blankly out the window as the rain lashed against the panes. He heard heavy, deliberate footsteps in the attic, though he knew the attic was sealed, untouched for years. Then a low, guttural moan echoed from the old slave quarters, a sound filled with ancient sorrow and simmering rage. It wasn't the wind this time. And then he saw it, a faint, shimmering outline of a man, dark-skinned, in tattered, rough-spun clothes, standing in the doorway of the oldest shack, staring directly at the main house. The spirit's gaze was fixed, unwavering, filled with a deep, burning resentment. She had no idea who was watching her, who truly saw her. Thomas started noticing things, little anomalies that defied all logic. Food in the pantry would spoil overnight, even fresh milk curdling in a matter of hours. Tools would disappear from the shed, only to reappear in bizarre, unsettling places, like inside the bottom of the old, unused well. Sarah, who meticulously tended her prized rose garden, found her most vibrant bushes withered overnight, their petals blackened and brittle as if scorched by an unseen fire. She blamed a sudden blight, then claimed squirrels were sabotaging her efforts. But Thomas, remembering the shadow, the mournful moan, the acrid burnt smell, started to feel a prickle of profound unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply off, something ancient and powerful stirring on his land, something that was specifically targeting Sarah and Mark. One evening, Sarah and Mark were sharing a secret laugh in the kitchen, their heads bent close, while Thomas was finishing chores in the barn. Suddenly, the kitchen lights flickered violently, then went out with a pop, plunging them into absolute darkness. Sarah screamed, dropping a glass which shattered loudly on the tile floor. When Mark fumbled for his phone flashlight, they found all the cabinet doors wide open and their contents, flour, sugar, spices, strewn across the floor. "Must be a power surge," Mark stammered, but his voice lacked conviction, tinged with a tremor of fear. Sarah looked genuinely terrified, her face pale in the dim light. Thomas, hearing the commotion, rushed in, drawn by the frantic cries. As he helped Sarah pick up the broken glass, he felt a sudden, inexplicable cold draft, and a whisper, clear as day, grazed his ear. "Traitor." He looked around, his eyes scanning the empty room. No one. He questioned if he was finally losing his mind, if the grief and betrayal were finally breaking his sanity. It felt 50% mystic, 50% questionable. Could it be real? Or was his mind playing tricks? The subtle torment continued, growing more personal, more malicious. Sarah's favorite antique locket, a family heirloom, would vanish from her dresser, only to be found hidden in Mark's truck, nestled among his greasy tools. Her expensive silk clothes would mysteriously rip or shrink after washing despite careful handling, ruining them. Mark's prized antique rifle, which he kept meticulously clean, was found rusted and jammed, utterly useless. Each incident was a coincidence, easily dismissed by Sarah and Mark as bad luck. Yet the unsettling pattern grew stronger, more insistent. Thomas started spending more time in the old slave quarters, drawn by an inexplicable pull, a morbid curiosity. He felt a sorrow there, a deep, pervasive grief that permeated the very wood, but also a profound sense of powerful, simmering anger, a palpable desire for justice. He started to feel a connection, an understanding of the long-forgotten pain of this land, a pain that mirrored his own. That's when he realized he wasn't alone in his suffering. The grand plan of Sarah and Mark was set. They would run away together, taking Thomas's life savings, a substantial sum he'd painstakingly accumulated over decades. They had packed their bags, waiting for Thomas to leave for the market, ready to make their escape. But as Sarah placed her packed suitcase by the front door, she stumbled, her foot catching on nothing, and a small leather-bound journal fell out of her bag. It wasn't hers. Thomas, about to leave for town, saw it. Curious and with a terrible premonition, he picked it up. The cover was aged, the pages brittle with time, the leather cracked. He opened it, and his entire world imploded, reconfiguring itself around this horrifying new truth. The journal was a detailed handwritten account from over a century ago. It belonged to an enslaved man named Ezekiel, who worked on this very farm. Ezekiel wrote of his deep, abiding love for his wife Lena, a beautiful woman with eyes like amber. He poured out his heart, his desperate hopes for freedom, his tender dreams with Lena. But then the entries changed. Bitterness, despair, raw, agonizing betrayal. Lena, his beloved Lena, had secretly been involved with a plantation owner's son, trading her body for small favors, for a life better than the brutal fields. The entries spoke of Ezekiel finding them together, the raw, searing pain that tore through his heart, and then a final chilling entry scrawled in desperate, vengeful anger. She betrayed me, just like they betray him. Some souls never learn. Some betrayals echo through time, chained to this very land. The truth was far more terrifying than Thomas could have ever imagined. Thomas looked up from the journal, his eyes wide with a horrifying, stomach-lurching realization. He heard a commotion from the kitchen. Sarah was screaming, frantic, her cries echoing through the farmhouse. Mark was trying to calm her, his own voice laced with panic. Thomas rushed in. The kitchen was in utter disarray. Food was splattered everywhere, cabinet doors ripped open, and the gas stove was leaking, hissing dangerously. A deep, resonant voice, not from this world, boomed through the room, directed with chilling intensity at Sarah. "You did this before. You will not do it again." Suddenly, a translucent figure materialized, a tall, imposing man in old, tattered clothing. It was the slave, Ezekiel. His eyes, burning with ancient rage and a century of suffering, were fixed on Sarah. He pointed a spectral, accusing finger at her. "Lena, you come back to ruin another honest man!" Sarah shrieked, clutching her head, as if memories not her own were violently flooding her mind. Her face contorted, not just in fear, but in a strange primal guilt, a recognition that vibrated through her very bones. And that's when it clicked for Thomas, a chill more profound than any ghost's touch, a revelation that pierced through the layers of deceit. The ultimate game-changing twist. Ezekiel wasn't just tormenting Sarah, he was showing her, revealing the vivid, agonizing echoes of her past life. Sarah, Thomas's treacherous wife, was the reincarnation of Lena, Ezekiel's equally treacherous wife from over a century ago. And Ezekiel wasn't a spirit of vengeance against Thomas. He was trying to save Thomas. He was trying to show Thomas the truth to break the brutal cycle of betrayal that Lena, Sarah had initiated generations ago on this very land. He was acting as a protector, a spiritual guide to stop history from repeating itself, to prevent another innocent heart from being broken by the same insidious hand. Ezekiel then turned to Mark. His spectral hand reached out, and Mark, who had been trying to grab Sarah and pull her away, suddenly froze, his eyes widening in unimaginable terror. A black, oily substance seemed to seep from his skin, his form distorting, twisting into a grotesque caricature of a man, his features melting into an expression of pure agony. He let out a gurgling primal cry, then collapsed, convulsing violently on the floor, his eyes rolling back into his head. It was a visceral, horrifying punishment, a direct consequence of his betrayal. The house itself seemed to shudder as if the very foundations of the past were shifting into place. Justice was epic and truly unexpected. The paramedics declared Mark dead of a massive heart attack, though the look of pure, unadulterated terror frozen on his face told a very different story. Sarah, incoherent and in shock, was taken away to a psychiatric hospital, muttering about Lena and Ezekiel and ancient debts she couldn't understand, yet felt in her soul. Thomas was left alone in his farmhouse, the air still thick with residual ancient energy, but also a profound, unsettling sense of peace. He wasn't heartbroken anymore. He was transformed. He understood. The old slave quarters, once a place of fear and forgotten sorrow, now held a different meaning. It was the resting place of a guardian, a protector who had crossed the veil of time to ensure justice, to prevent history from repeating its cruelest chapters. He picked up Ezekiel's journal again, tracing the faded words with a newfound reverence. He now saw the farm not just as land he worked, but as a living tapestry of history, deep pain, and ultimate redemption. He knew his life would never be the same. He cleaned the house not with despair, but with a new resolute sense of purpose. He would honor Ezekiel, would ensure that no one would suffer such profound, echoing betrayal on this land again. He placed the journal carefully on the mantel, a silent promise, a pact with the unseen. The old farmhouse, once a symbol of his heartbreak, was now a monument to an ancestral justice, a place where the past refused to stay buried, where ancient wrongs were finally set right. Thomas, once a victim, was now a survivor, empowered by a ghost who truly had his back, a silent ally from beyond the grave. But what about the other spirits who still linger, tied to their earthly pains and unresolved conflicts? Could their whispers still influence the living, weaving their own twisted tales of vengeance and redemption, just waiting for the right moment to intervene? Because on this land, some debts are never truly paid, and some souls never truly rest until justice is served. The past is never truly dead. It's merely sleeping, waiting for the right moment to awaken and demand its due. And on this land, where ancient betrayals echo through generations, some debts are never truly paid. What other secrets lie buried beneath the soil, just waiting for a spirit to expose them, to intervene in the lives of the living? Join us next time on Whispered Souls as we dig deeper into the haunted history that refuses to stay silent. You won't believe what we uncover.